Tonight, your room is 80 degrees. You are sweating. Yet, as you lie down, your hand reaches for a heavy piece of cloth. You pull it over your chest. Why do you do this? It makes absolutely no logical sense. Your body is desperately trying to shed heat to survive the summer night. The air is thick, humid, and completely unforgiving. But without that blanket, your eyes remain wide open. You feel strangely exposed to the empty room. What is your brain actually afraid of? The real answer is far stranger than simple habit. It involves millions of years of human evolution. It is tied to the deepest, most primitive parts of your nervous system. To understand it, you have to look back. Way back. Who were you before you had a mattress? Imagine your ancestors sleeping on the African savanna. The night was not a time of rest. It was a time of immense, terrifying danger. The darkness hid predators that possessed far superior night vision. Early hominids were completely blind in the pitch black. They were slow, soft, and lacked defensive claws or fangs. How did they survive the night? For a long time, they slept high up in the trees. They built nests in the branches, clinging to the wood to avoid the terrifying creatures prowling below. But eventually, our ancestors came down to the ground. They began walking upright and needed deeper, more restorative sleep to power their rapidly expanding brains. They could no longer sleep with one eye open in a tree. They had to sleep on the dirt. They huddled together in caves or around the flickering light of campfires. They covered themselves with thick animal skins, wide leaves, and woven fibers. This was not just a strategy to stay warm against the nighttime chill. It was an essential way to create a physical boundary between their vulnerable flesh and the terrifying unknown. That ancient fear of exposure is still hardwired directly into your DNA today. Your brain has never forgotten the predators lurking in the dark. When you fall asleep, you enter a state of profound vulnerability. Your conscious mind completely shuts down. Your skeletal muscles become entirely paralyzed. This phase is known as REM sleep, the deep state where dreaming occurs. During REM sleep, you are a sitting duck. Can you imagine a worse physiological state to be in while resting in a wild, untamed environment? Your brain is hyper-aware of how dangerous this paralysis is. It is intensely paranoid. It demands an undeniable signal of safety before it allows the chemical cascade of sleep to begin. The blanket acts as a proxy for the safety of the tribe and the shelter of the cave. It mimics the sensation of being completely surrounded and protected. It is a psychological shield against the invisible monsters that your ancient biology still remembers. But there is a deeply physiological side to this mystery, too. The science of sleep reveals a fascinating and counterintuitive drop in your internal thermostat. Sleep researcher Matthew Walker has extensively documented this exact biological phenomenon. When you prepare to sleep, your core body temperature must drop by about 2 to 3 degrees Fahrenheit. Your brain initiates this vital cooling process to plunge you into deep, restorative sleep. But to cool your core, your skin temperature actually has to rise. Your blood vessels rapidly dilate. They push massive amounts of heat out of your internal organs and into your extremities, like your hands, feet, and the surface of your skin. This means your skin becomes incredibly sensitive to the ambient air around you. Even in a sweltering room, your skin might perceive a sudden chill as your core frantically dumps heat. The blanket steps in to create a controlled microclimate. It traps the heat your body is shedding, keeping your highly sensitive skin perfectly satisfied. Why does your skin need to be tricked like this? Because sudden, unexpected changes in skin temperature trigger a massive alarm response in your brainstem. Your nervous system misinterprets a cool breeze as a sudden exposure to the elements, a threat to your immediate survival. It spikes your adrenaline and jolts you awake, thinking you have been left entirely out in the cold. The blanket stabilizes your immediate sensory environment. It whispers a constant, reassuring message to your nervous system that the climate is perfectly controlled and there are no incoming threats. Then there is the profound, almost magical impact of physical weight. The sheer physical pressure of the fabric plays a massive, invisible role in your daily psychology. You have likely heard of the recent trend of heavy, weighted blankets. But even a seemingly weightless, thin cotton sheet provides a highly specific kind of sensory input. This powerful phenomenon is known clinically as deep pressure stimulation. What exactly does pressure do to the chaotic architecture of your mind? To answer that, you have to look at the groundbreaking, paradigm-shifting work of Temple Grandin. Grandin is a renowned scientist who deeply studied animal behavior and human neurodivergence. She noticed something fascinating about livestock. Cattle became incredibly calm, almost entirely sedated when they were gently squeezed in a mechanical chute before receiving vaccinations. The firm, evenly distributed physical pressure completely deactivated their instinctive panic responses. Grandin realized this was not just an animal trait, but a universal mammalian feature. She bravely applied this exact same concept to human beings. She invented a device called a hug machine. It was designed to provide mechanical deep pressure to people with hypersensitive, easily overwhelmed nervous systems. The results were undeniable and completely universal. Deep, distributed pressure forcefully activates the parasympathetic nervous system. It flips the biological switch from fight or flight to rest and digest. It physically forces your racing heart rate to slow down to a crawl. When you pull a blanket over your chest, you are giving yourself a mild, daily version of this deep pressure therapy. The subtle weight of the fabric pushes down on millions of tiny skin receptors across your entire body. These receptors send a massive, synchronized wave of calming electrical signals directly up your spinal cord. They reach the base of your brain and instantly lower your blood cortisol levels. Cortisol is the stress hormone that keeps you anxious, hypervigilant, and aggressively alert. How fast does this chemical shift happen? It happens in a matter of mere seconds. As your cortisol levels plummet, your brain enthusiastically releases a sudden surge of serotonin. Serotonin is the powerful neurotransmitter responsible for generating intense feelings of well-being, contentment, and absolute safety. Crucially, serotonin acts as the necessary chemical precursor to melatonin. Melatonin is the heavy, sedating hormone that actually pulls your consciousness down into the dark depths of sleep. The blanket is not just a piece of decor. It is essentially a biological trigger. Without the blanket, this necessary chemical cascade simply never begins. Your nervous system stubbornly remains in a state of low-grade, exhausting vigilance. You toss and turn violently in the heat. You feel a vague, irritating sense of unease that you cannot logically explain. Your brain is stubbornly waiting for the physical cue to finally stand down the guards. This desperate craving for physical pressure begins the exact moment you are born. Think about how human beings instinctively care for distressed infants. When a newborn baby is crying uncontrollably, screaming into the void, what is the very first thing a parent naturally does? They swaddle the baby. They wrap the tiny infant incredibly tightly in a warm, soft cloth. Why does this ancient technique work so universally well across every human culture? The tight swaddle perfectly recreates the physical, sensory environment of the mother's womb. Before you were born into this chaotic reality, you spent 9 months floating in a tight, warm, highly pressurized space. You were completely safe from the elements. You were entirely enveloped in physical contact. That overwhelming feeling of tight enclosure is your very first deeply embedded memory of perfect, untouchable security. The blanket on your bed is just a lifelong subconscious attempt to return to that flawless state. You spend your entire adult life secretly chasing the womb. The world outside your bedroom is chaotic, impossibly bright, bitterly cold, and emotionally exhausting. The bed is your soft sanctuary, but the blanket is the actual defensive fortress. Without it, the sacred boundary between your fragile self and the relentless, demanding world is utterly erased. You are left entirely naked against the vast universe. Does that sound overly dramatic to your modern mind? It is exactly how your subconscious, primitive brain perceives the situation. The illusion of safety is a surprisingly powerful biological tool. Psychologist Alice Kelly has explored how adults subconsciously use physical objects to manage extreme, invisible psychological anxiety. Her fascinating work shows that tangible, tactile boundaries are absolutely crucial for maintaining human emotional regulation. We use tailored clothes to boldly construct our social identity and armor ourselves against judgment. We use thick walls and locked doors to clearly define our private territory. We use heavy blankets to draw a distinct physical line between the vulnerable self and the terrifying void of unconsciousness. A thin sheet of cotton threads cannot stop a determined burglar. It absolutely cannot stop a raging house fire. It can't protect you from any real, tangible physical danger in the modern, industrialized world. It is functionally completely useless as an actual defensive shield. But your ancient brain does not operate on cold, modern logic. Your brain operates on primitive, deep-seated emotional symbolism. The physical sensation of being covered is instantly interpreted as being effectively hidden. In the brutal wilderness, to be hidden is to survive another day. When you are fully covered, the ancient, paranoid sentinels in your mind can finally relax their grip and close their eyes. They truly believe you are successfully camouflaged from the deadly predators of the night. You are safely tucked away in the back of the dark cave. The warm fire is burning brightly at the entrance, and the rest of the strong tribe is gathered tightly around you. This deeply ingrained evolutionary conditioning is aggressively reinforced every single night of your entire life. From the very day you were brought home from the bright, noisy hospital, the act of falling asleep and the presence of blankets were inextricably paired together. It is a textbook, inescapable Pavlovian response. You see a soft bed. You feel the cool fabric against your skin. You immediately get sleepy. The neurological association is practically unbreakable. Try to forcefully sleep without it, and your brain instantly throws a massive error code. It recognizes the late time of night. It registers the darkness of the room, and it acknowledges your horizontal posture of sleep. But the absolutely vital tactile component is alarmingly missing. The sleep equation is severely incomplete. Your brain stubbornly refuses to hit the final shutdown button until the last necessary variable is securely in place. It will literally keep you tossing and turning, wide awake in a sweltering, unbearable room, rather than let you slip into a vulnerable coma completely unprotected. It is a strangely beautiful, highly irrational quirk of the complex human machine. You are a highly advanced, modern creature, capable of splitting the microscopic atom and traveling into the vastness of outer space. You pay complex taxes, drive high-speed cars, and communicate across the globe using supercomputers in your pocket. But at night, in the dark, you immediately revert to a frightened, naked ape, absolutely terrified of the unknown. You require a magic piece of woven cloth just to feel brave enough to close your eyes. So the next time you find yourself aggressively kicking one leg out from under the covers just to vent the unbearable heat, the next time you are stubbornly clinging to a tiny, crumpled corner of the duvet while the ceiling fan aggressively blows directly on your sweating face. Do not feel foolish or broken. You are merely honoring an ancient, deeply embedded survival protocol. You are satisfying the stubborn demands of an ancient, paranoid nervous system that has kept your ancestors alive for millions of years. You are giving your primitive brain exactly what it desperately needs to finally surrender to the dark void. The terrifying darkness is still out there. The ancient, unspoken fears are still buried deep in the architecture of your mind. But as long as you have that thin, fragile layer of cotton draped over you, you are completely safe from the monsters. Tonight, your room is 80 degrees. You are sweating. Yet, as you lie down, your hand reaches for a heavy piece of cloth.
Thanks so much for watching! If you enjoyed this journey into the future, don't forget to like, subscribe.